culture is for all of us. It's a challenge that we all need to think about and build habits around. And I think it should be the top of the agenda of organisations. As leaders, we all need to be in touch with our own human condition and understand ourselves, but then also human condition is really important and how to get the best out in any given situation. I think if people can be given more time and space to lead people, then I think that's what I see the future being.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Gemma Ellison. Gemma is the founder of Heart Leadership, a culture and leadership consultancy. She attended Liverpool John Moores University, where she studied the law and was a solicitor at Brodie Jackson Cancer. Gemma was previously a senior talent and leadership manager at Macmillan Cancer Support. Gemma strongly believes in helping organizations and leaders build a healthy and inspiring performance environment. And she's on a mission to find unique, bespoke ways to enhance culture. So, a very big warm welcome to the show, Gemma.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Really excited for today's discussion. But before we get there, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is, on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law, if you've seen it?
So I was a family lawyer in child protection. So in terms of my world, 2. I definitely didn't see Harvey Specter knocking about Vernon Street Family Court. So
there we go. I'm very well justified. And with that 2, we'll move swiftly on to talk all about you. So to begin with, Jen, would you mind telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Yeah, sure. I guess first thing about background, I was born in Liverpool. I'm sure you can tell with the accent. Very sort of deprived area of Liverpool. So becoming a lawyer was never sort of on my agenda, I guess, for people like me. So grew up in it with a single mum, deprived area of Liverpool. Things were not easy. And I guess that led to me wanting to become a family lawyer to sort of support people who were in my position, I guess, to an extent. Things with, again, another thing in terms of my background, I've got ADHD. I was undiagnosed until I was 30. So I spent my life wondering why on earth I couldn't do well in an exam. So a bit of a unusual start really in terms of people I ended up working with and colleagues. I was much more like my clients, I guess, than my colleagues. So that's where it all started. I guess I wanted to be a solicitor because I had a strong sense of justice. I always have. I guess our city is quite famous for it, really. But also, my mum was a cleaner, and I wanted to buy her a house. And I thought, I know there'll be money in this game. I was wrong as a legal aid lawyer, as it happens. But then, so one of the big things for me in my life, unfortunately, my mum died before I had a chance to qualify. So I was very motivated and driven to that point for that reason. And then I carried on, I guess. So I became a child protection lawyer. And that, in a nutshell, is, I guess, what you need to know about me in terms of the beginning, really, and that context plays a massive part in terms of who I am and why I do what I do now.
Yeah, and we're absolutely going to go into that. And thank you for sharing so openly. And yeah, we've had lots of guests on the show before, with likes of Jodie Hill, Amelia Platten, who runs the Neurodiverse project as well. You know, I think we need to have more conversations. You mentioned there, age 30, only just sort of finding out from the ADHD side. So that's why we're so keen to have you on today to learn more about your journey and also get your own perspectives. But what did you most enjoy when you were a solicitor specifically from your time there?
Clients. So I was always quite interested. I didn't like the law. I had no interest in the law itself. I believed in justice, and I always believed in giving a voice to people who didn't have one in society. So I absolutely loved the clients, and I loved people coming to me from lots of different walks of life, lots of different backgrounds, and coming to me with a problem. And then we got into a bit of sort of behavioural change, I guess, to an extent. I was much more than the lawyer. I became the first person they told they were pregnant, or the first person in the hospital when they had a baby. And I had to bring them on a journey from getting to where they were to who they wanted to be. And I was fascinated by that. I was fascinated by the human condition, I guess. So that's what I loved. In terms of the black letter law, wasn't really my bag, really, but the people, the clients, law is a people game, and I loved that.
And that's the key point, because I think so many people can obviously deliver the the legal service, but it's that human touch. It's that building that genuine relationship. It's caring for your clients. That's the real piece that people are going to buy into. And you gave great examples there where people are telling you really personal life moments and sharing it with us. There's a relationship there, an authentic relationship. So I think that's a really good piece of advice, just generally for our listeners as well. In a world that's super competitive, a way to not race to the bottom is actually really double down on fostering really good quality client relationships. Okay, let's move forwards then, because I'd love to talk about Heart Leadership, because you are the founder of Heart Leadership. Would you mind telling us a bit about the culture and leadership consultancy, and again, why it all started?
Yeah, so it all started because I mentioned just there about a big bereavement in my life. So you start to question life and why things happen. And I started to wonder, why on earth does anyone want to work in a law firm? I was genuinely interested as a lawyer, thinking, why do we all do this? Why is our life measured in 6-minute units and we've got to do things in this way? So I became very interested in what I now know to be culture. Luckily at the time, we had a CEO who loved that kind of stuff. He wasn't a lawyer himself, and he wanted to create a place where he would want to come to work. So I was cheeky and sort of created my own job. I'd been a solicitor. I'd won lots of awards. I'd done really good work. And I wanted to change career. So I remember just before I was 30, I decided to ask him if I could do some culture work. So I created my own job, which was Director of Culture, the first one that I knew of in the law. And I started looking after all things employee experience. So my job essentially was to create a great place to work for 300 people. So I did that. Looked after all sorts of different things in that space and created it from the ground up. And then we started to acquire law firms. So I would go into law firms and do the same thing, assess the culture, help them build leadership capability. So I was doing that anyway, to be honest. And then I guess I'm not very good at being employed, Rob, to be honest. And I think the ADHD may play a big part in that. But I've always known I wanted to see life beyond the law. I wanted to test my own ability out there. So I went to Macmillan for a while and helped with their culture and leadership and talent. And then with the view to always setting up Heart Leadership. So Heart Leadership is a leadership and culture consultancy. We help people build really great places to work. And build is the important word, because it's a process. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and I love how you innovated. So many people stay at a problem, or they see something and don't take action. I love that you created your own role. I think we had Trevor Sterling on before, who very, very successful law firm partner. He says, don't just aspire to climb the ladder, aspire to be the ladder. And I think, you gave a great example there where you created your own ladder in many respects. Yeah. You created your own role. And then obviously it's gone on to, having a wonderful business and all these wonderful opportunities. But you touched on there one of your previous roles as a sort of senior talent leadership manager at the likes of Macmillan Cancer Support. And you've also had some sort of culture and learning director roles as well. Have those experiences, or how have those experiences really shaped your approach to Heart Leadership?
So the first, culture director roles, help me to understand how owners of businesses think, because it's you'll know yourself, it's a strange position being in when you own a business, and I got a real insight into how owners worked and what they wanted to see, and how to, particularly in the law, explain things like culture and why actually it's key to performance, not just a fluffy thing to have and it's a nice to have. So that was great experience for me there. Macmillan, I had a great leader who was very inspiring and sort of would throw me into situations to build my experience. I refound my love of facilitation there. We had a great management development program. And I guess at Macmillan, my obsession with managers was able to test it really, because often in organisations we think about leadership as a role, not as a behaviour. And we've got a missing layer of people who don't get any attention, which is managers, which is your team leaders, your heads of department maybe. And at Macmillan, they had a real focus on the 400 managers that they had in those roles. So lots of great work there, and also testing myself in a different industry. Charity is so different to the corporate world, and that was always important to me too. For me, again, I always wanted to own my own business, and I always wanted to work across industries so that I could see what was going on in different places, bring it all in to give the clients that I have the best possible view of what's happening out there in the world. So I don't think any job is ever wasted. I think, you learn from everywhere you go. And I've done that from my first ever jobs. So everything I've experienced, everything I've done has brought me to this place, and I'm still learning all the time.
And that's it, as we all are, and as we all should be, even more so in the age of 2025. And, no 2 days absolutely the same. And I always talk about that from my sort of legal recruiting perspective when I'm talking to lawyers who are thinking about career moves. It's about building blocks, your career. Nowadays, when you make a career move, it's another building block to put on top of your sort of already established skill set, whatever it might be. And then these complement each other. And then there's transferability. There's the option to then build on these and set up your own business like you've done or whatever it is. So always treat sort of career moves as another building block as part of you kind of your own journey. And I think you gave a really good example of that as well. You've given high level an overview of what Heart Leadership does, but I think you do some really good work. So I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit more about the services you specifically offer with your business.
We build cultures with organisations, so it's very much a partnership. We don't sort of direct and detach, I guess, to an extent. We're very much alongside people. So we do that in 3 different ways. So we help with leadership and management. So leadership being the behaviour, not just the role, culture and learning. So in leadership, we'll do leadership development, but with a difference. I don't speak in theories and models. I've been on the ground as a leader in an organisation. I know it's hard. So I'm a storyteller. I like to create experiences that are grounded in reality and how people feel now. So leadership work's really popular, to be honest. In terms of culture, I am anti-transformation. Okay, so we're on LinkedIn for 5 seconds and we see lots of transformation conversations. I'm anti-transformation insofar as culture is not an event. It is something to build. So you mentioned building blocks there.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I approach culture. So we build it to last. It's not just it's not an event. It's not something to solve once. It's a habit. It's something that we have to get into. So we help organizations to develop culture habits, whether that's communication, engagement, listening, anything like that. So we're a real sort of culture partner, and also we assess culture too. So we get in and get under the bonnet of what's going on in an organisation, which is scary for owners of businesses. And then learning. Okay, so I'm a big fan of learning and creating learning cultures. So one thing that we've noticed is that organisations sometimes haven't got the resource to run a learning development team. Now, you mentioned earlier with lawyers about those essential skills, as I would call them. For me, teaching lawyers how to communicate and teaching people how to have empathy and all that kind of thing is important. So we essentially build academies for people, and we can be their fractional L&D partner. So you don't need to have a full-time L&D person. We'll come in, write your strategy, deliver it if you need to, but help you to really build something that can keep your people engaged. So 3 things: leadership, culture and learning is what we do, really.
Today's episode is brought to you by Clio, the all-in-one legal practice management software designed to help solicitors like you save time, stay organised and deliver outstanding client experience. Clio is trusted by thousands of legal professionals worldwide, offering a user-friendly interface, seamless time recording, automated billing and secure cloud storage, so you can manage your practice from anywhere. With Clio, you'll get award-winning support available 24/5 by live chat, phone and email. So help is always there when you need it most. It's no wonder Clio consistently receives 5-star ratings for its ease of use and top-notch service. If you're ready to experience a better way to manage your practice, visit clio.com/UK to learn more and see why Clio continues to be the go-to choice for solicitors across the UK. Now back to the show. I love that you talked about habits, because it reminds me of when I was at ClioCon last year, and obviously Clio sponsor our show, and that was in Austin, Texas, and they had James Clear as one of the keynote speakers, who you'll probably know very well as well. And he says replace goals with systems. So very simple example: if you want to be a better writer as a lawyer, then start by putting a pen and paper next to your sort of desk-type bed every night tonight. Try something, or maybe you want to be a better researcher, pick up a book, or do like habits rather than just having these targets and goals. Have things that in place that can really help you build a system that can change things. So I love that you're working on that, and all the great work that you do. Let's dive deeper into purpose, driven environments, because I think there's a real need for that now, and particularly the people I'm talking to are not just coming to work for a salary, they're coming to work for some real purpose and meaningful work. So you saying purpose-driven environment happens by design, not accident. What are the key elements of designing such an environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, on that first point there about it being by design, not by accident, people will have a culture, whether they they like it or not, or whether they know it or not. And if you don't design it, then it designs itself. And that's where we start getting accidental cultures that are problematic at times. So for me, the first thing to do is to listen. So whether it's us going into an organisation and listening for them, or whether we're supporting people to set up their own listening systems, that's what we'll do. So listening is the key point. Culture leaves clues. Okay, so people will tell you very quickly how they feel about working in a place, and that can be really, really scary. People sometimes don't want to do that, but listening is the first thing to do. I then, back onto the habits point, we start small, and it's sort of, this feels contrary to what we're told. We're always told, big picture thinking, let's transform things. It's not sustainable. So for me, people haven't got the time or the attention span or the resource to go around transforming things. So what I help them do is to start small, and often the small things have the biggest impact. So always looking for some quick wins when we've done a listening exercise. So I think listen first, then we start small. We start building out systems. Back to your James Clear reference there. Start building systems in some areas in your organisation. Then importantly, we test things. Yeah. So with small groups of people. So again, often you might sort of bring in somebody and say, right, I want new values, and then you'll create some, and then they just go on the wall. Well, do they really work? So I'm a big fan of experimentation in organisations. So we'll test, we'll experiment, we'll pilot things, and then when we've got evidence that change is being effective, we will then launch and implement things. So that's the typical way of doing things. And also when you're doing that, you're bringing people on the journey with you. You're not doing it to people, you're doing it with people. And, I'm a big, we spend hours and hours on business plans, but there are a group of people who have to deliver that plan. So getting them as on board and engaged and bought into the purpose and setting the purpose as possible always wins. So that's typically the system that we would use when we would think about creating purpose sort of driven environments, and it tends to work, to be honest. But importantly, it's sustainable.
Yeah, and I love that you just start with listening, but really active listening and really information gathering, because then it's bespoke, isn't it? And what you're offering is correct. But the other key point with this is it's work, right? You have to put in the work to get the right culture and to have flourish, and like you say. So, fail fast, absolutely A/B test things, because not everything's going to work straight off the bat, right? So I love that you do that. And then once you've done that testing, you then implement what's hopefully going to work. And even from there, there's still going to need to be tweaks, there's going to be refinements, they're going to be need things as certain events happen, whatever it might be. Let's talk about the sensitivity for the human condition, because you've been described as I just said, sensitivity for human condition. How has this shaped your approach to leadership and culture specifically?
I remember that being said to me once. It was by a barrister who I used to get quite difficult clients come across my desk, which I loved. And I think he was writing an award recommendation, and he said that, and I was interested because I asked him what he meant, and he said, you just seem to get it from a human perspective. You appreciate that people are human, that we all have individual contexts, and that those contexts consistently change. So for me, I love sport. We're both Liverpool fans, Rob. Yep. So I'm very interested in how humans are motivated, how I'm very interested in leadership and how we can create healthy and inspiring performance environments for teams. And that, for me, starts with being sensitive to the human condition and realising that people are human. And I think, whether I'm just an eternal optimist, but I think people are fundamentally good. People don't want to go to work and do bad things, typically. So how can we tap into everyone else's human condition, and how can we create an environment that brings the best out in that person? So one of the things I picked up from Macmillan was about getting to know your team as individuals. That's important. What motivates them? How can we get the best out of them? So, but I think now with the whole human condition piece, and leadership and culture, people, you said before, people are not just coming to work for a salary anymore. People
Yeah.
are coming to work for much more than that. And people are now knowing their boundaries too, which I think has been a long time coming. It's not just, the new generations coming through the workforce. It's everyone. The pandemic's changed things. So
Yeah.
I think as leaders, we all need to be in touch with our own human condition and understand ourselves. But then also, human condition is really important and how to get the best out of any given situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's just really fabulous work that you're doing, because it's coming from a place of really supporting and hopefully giving people the tools to then flourish and have a more purpose fueled career, which is ultimately what it's all about. But we are Liverpool fans, and I know you have a little piece when it comes to Jurgen Klopp, obviously former Liverpool manager. Would love to share a little bit about that, because that's how we were originally connected, actually, through another alumni, the wonderful Sean Jardine, who was just wowed by your talk when you used that Liverpool reference. So would you mind giving a bit of context to our listeners for that one? Because I think it's quite relevant for today.
Yeah, so it was called What Would Jurgen Do? And it was created because I had some time to fill at a conference we were delivering at Anfield, of all places. It was a very nice day for me.
Yeah.
And it was, I came up with sort of 6 pillars to a leadership model, and I used it now, even now. So the first thing was data, thinking about what data do we have. Sounds strange talking about data when it comes to culture, but it's so important. Again, I said before, culture leaves clues. So we're talking about how can we look at the data we have and optimize that. I think there's so much good stuff happening in the AI space now that will help there. We've then got a clear plan. So what is the clear plan? And does everyone know what it is? You'd be surprised how many organisations I go into and no one has a clue what they're driving towards or why. But as part of that clear plan, having relationships central to that, which is what Jurgen did at Liverpool. It was 70% team building and 30% tactics. Then moving on to relentless inclusivity. When we win, we all win. And how can we make sure that everybody in your organisation knows that they play a part, whether that is from whatever level in the organisation, from whatever role in the organisation. Psychological safety, key in a law firm, particularly in the environments that we operate in. Cannot have covering up of mistakes. So how can we create that space? We then got increasing capability. I think that's the role of a leader. Jordan Henderson said about Klopp is he makes everybody around him better. And that was, and the same has been said about Slot, to be honest. And the final thing is having a team of leaders, which I love. I think for me, a competitive advantage of any organisation is creating and nurturing and supporting leaders quicker than anyone else around you. And that is leaders at every single level and leadership as a behaviour. So that is a keynote I do, but it's also a course I run. That's a session for teams and bringing them through that sort of methodology. So there we go.
Yeah, no, love it. And thank you again for giving us some insight into that. I think it's absolutely bang on. So really appreciate it. And it's not because I'm biased as a Liverpool fan, of course. But you talked very extensively there about leadership, and you also touched on sort of AI and technology. So I guess my next question is, how do you see leadership evolving over the next couple of years, especially as we continue to adopt all of these new technologies in your business and, law firms as well?
I would like to see leadership being respected for the skill set that it is. Okay, so I talk a lot about the deliberate leader.
Yeah.
One of the first questions if I was recruiting a leader, or if I'm, dealing with helping people with internal promotions, first question, do you want to lead people? Do you have an interest in doing that? Because for me, at the moment in organisations, leadership is still a side of the desk job. It's on a Tuesday afternoon when I've finished everything else, I might think about leading my team. So I think now with AI and everything else that's coming in, technology is changing so quickly. If we can automate some of the other stuff and actually, create a space where leaders can lead, I think being able to effectively run a high-performing team and coach them, that is such a valuable skill set. And I would love for organisations to take a leaf out of the book of sport where, Arne Slot now for Liverpool, he's not He doesn't have to sell the kit. He doesn't have to sell tickets. He's not a physio. He's the team coach. Yeah. And I think, well, I'm starting to do it with organisations now, be their team coach. And I would really like the organisations to start placing a value on leadership. And I think, if I'm honest, that's where the law needs to start catching up a little bit more and putting a real focus on how can we create an environment that can optimize the performance of our people, and for that to be healthy and inspiring too. And culture doesn't have to be about just the fluffy things. I always ban that word, but it is about performance, and it's about success, and how can you create environments where that can happen. And for me, leadership's got a key role there. And I think if people can be given more time and space to lead people, then I think that's what I see the future being, and I hope it's what the future is.
Yeah, no, and we absolutely support that 100%. Could we talk about misconceptions about workplace culture? Because I think this is very important as well. What misconceptions do leaders often have about workplace culture, or you come across time and time again, and how do you help them overcome these?
I think the first thing is people seem to think still, I guess Silicon Valley's responsible for this. People think culture is pool tables and free food on a Friday and yoga classes, and it's not. That's not what organizational culture is all about. I also think that people are scared to understand what theirs is and what it's like, and I think there's sometimes a gap between what a senior leader or owner of a business thinks the culture is and what the people who are actually in the business think it is. So sometimes leadership teams have got a very favourable view of what it's like to work in the organisation, whereas when you actually get into the organisation under the bonnet, it's sometimes a very different experience. So, and I think, culture is all about how can people feel valued? Do people feel heard? Do people know that the work that they're doing is part of something bigger? Because realistically, we all want to feel part of something. We all want to belong. And I think, some of the other misconceptions I see is around belonging. So Owen Eastwood, I'm a big fan of Owen Eastwood and his book Belonging, and he talks about the fact that, belonging is a biological thing too. So sometimes you'll see organisations where people are stressed, or people are overly stressed, burnt out and this sort of thing, or anxious, worried, and then people still expect them to hit high performance when actually it's not possible for us. If we are worried that we don't belong somewhere and we're anxious and we're scared or nervous, that's where our energy goes into survival mode rather than our ability to hit high performance. So I think it all ties in, and I think one of the misconceptions is that culture is a HR thing, it belongs over there, when actually culture is for all of us. It's a challenge that we all need to think about and build habits around. And I think it should be the top of the agenda of organisations, because the culture is everything really. It's how does it feel to work around here? If it doesn't feel good, you're going to know about it.
Yeah, and look, culture is your biggest asset, but could also be your biggest liability if you don't pay attention to it. So I love that you give some really good examples there around some of the misconceptions and things people should be thinking about. And it should absolutely be at the top of the agenda, because particularly in law firms, you're not necessarily selling the legal advice, you're selling the people, right? And if your people are involved and it's a people business and they're motivated and they feel like they have a sense of belonging and they really know where that North Star is and why they're working on that and part of a wider mission, the more fulfilled career they have, the more job satisfaction you'll have, just an overall better experience, higher client experience, all of that good stuff. So love it. Okay, I guess that leads nicely on to mentors, and I know it's something you're passionate about as well. In one of your recent LinkedIn posts, you focus on the importance of mentoring. So mentoring has played such a huge part in my development since I started working in the world of work. What can we do to pay it forward? How can we go about mentoring others? Love that. Far away.
Yeah, look, mentoring is so that, we are a product of what people are around us, and I think it's important that we choose the right people to be around us. I owe a lot of people who have given me a chance, who've taken a chance on a kid from Liverpool who didn't have very good academics and everything else, and who put time and energy and effort into me when they didn't have to. So I owe a lot of people a lot of gratitude. So for me, it's really important to think, how can we, if we want to create, again, great lawyers, great leaders, we have to put the effort in to do that. And I think, that's really important that we do pay it forward. I used to run an initiative with my partner called What Does a Lawyer Look Like, where we would mentor people from underrepresented backgrounds into sort of moving up the ladder in an organisation. And I was talking to one of my old leaders before, actually, and she was talking about, if you're giving the leg up the ladder, make sure you extend the ladder on the way back down. And I think it's important. It's also fulfilling, though. It's also nice to be able to pass on the wisdom that you've been fortunate enough to acquire from other people to others, because we do have a responsibility that, let's be honest, the world needs better leaders, the world needs better humans, and we need to pay attention to that. I think we've become quite polarized and individualistic as a society, when actually community is so important. I mean, you could have me on this for days, so I'll be brief, but that sense of community, and I think if we all just take a step to look past our own desk or look out of our own door and see, who can I help? Can I help one person? Because you don't realize the power of a kind word or of a conversation or of an hour of your time. And I know that we're all busy, but I think if we want to create a better future for all of us and for our colleagues and our clients and everybody else, I think that all starts with us taking a little bit of time and lifting our heads up and helping other people and giving them our time.
+1 to that. Very well said. And there's a real reason why I brand myself as a legal community builder, and I believe and talk about it so much, and we have a shared passion, because I think it is so important. And I think you have radiators and drains in your life. You have people that radiate energy, people that are going to really kind of bring the best out of you, and unfortunately there are drains that are going to suck the life out of you. And it's really important that you take that responsibility, because there has to be self-accountability. Unfortunately, in this world, the best way to make sure the world is the way you want it to be is to take action yourself and not necessarily rely on others. But when you build that community and you have more radiators around you, then absolutely you're going to have lots more fulfillment. You're going to be able to get through any of the tough times that you might have. So if you're in a room and it's just draining your energy, you need to get out of that room. And that's the key message here. Gem, this has been an absolute masterclass. I've really enjoyed learning about your story, and thank you for being so open and honest about sort of where it all started, your inspirations and aspirations, and everything that you've gone on to achieve and will continue to do. If our listeners, which I'm sure they will, want to follow you or indeed learn more about Heart Leadership, where can they go to find out more? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles. We'll also include them in this very special episode for you too.
Yeah, so the best place to find me at the moment is LinkedIn. So I'm very, very active on LinkedIn, often talking about my football analogies and just tips on culture habits too. So yeah, head over there. And if anyone wants to reach out and have a chat, I'm always happy to talk.
Absolutely. Well, just leaves me to say thank you so much once again. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. From all of us on the League Speaking podcast, sponsored by Clio, wishing you lots of continued success with your career and indeed all the future things you get up to. But for now, from all of us, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.